KPMG is one of the top 4 accountancy firms in the world. They interview thousands of people each year to recruit for their graduate trainee scheme. We're going to see how 4 candidates from the University of Edinburgh got on. Juan is completing a PhD in public sector accounting. Philippa is taking a master's in French and European history. Abipsa is doing a master's in economics and finance. And Jake is an environmental scientist. They were interviewed by Caroline O'Boyle and Matthew Parker. The selectors aren't trying to meet a quota for recruits. They're only interested in finding candidates who meet the criteria which KPMG have set. Some people say that selectors make up their mind in the first minute of an interview and spend the next 40 minutes trying to justify their initial reaction. With their competency-based interviews, KPMG want to make the process fairer and more transparent. This DVD shows what you can expect in this type of interview. We don't deal with the first minute where you shake hands with the selector in reception and make small talk as they take you to the interview room. So you'll need to practice your handshakes and your winning smile with friends and careers advisors.
Thank you very much for getting here to us today. I hope you found us without too much difficulty. Good.
In KPMG's competency-based interviews, there aren't any warm-up questions. The selector's got your application form and the personality profile which you took online and wants to hear you talk about specific times when you have demonstrated specific competencies. It's tempting to try and give a broad picture of your experiences and personality, but that's not what they want to hear.
According to your profile, you describe yourself as someone who is usually pleasant and diplomatic when expressing your views in a team.
Yes.
So can you tell me about a time when your views have differed from those of other team members?
Right. Well, I would think that sometimes it's good, being diplomatic about your own opinions, but at times you have to stand up for yourself, and I would consider that sometimes would become a disadvantage of me. It's just where I came from. Holding back personal opinions about other people is considered as a virtue, so I was educated that way. But so for example, in a group, I would usually be the one that listening to other people's opinion. And
in a competency-based interview, the selector isn't really interested in your ideas or your philosophy. She needs to hear about specific occasions when you have demonstrated each competency.
So yeah, that's my personal approach.
Okay, so can you tell me about a time when you've had to, when you've come across a situation where your views have differed and then what you did?
Okay.
If the selector has to repeat a question, it's a warning that you're not being specific enough in your answer. To avoid waffling, you need to prepare examples of times when you've demonstrated each of the competencies that they're looking for.
Semester about the designing of a specific workshop, and there were different opinions from other people saying that, okay, we should do such and such about this, and we should delete this content. So I said, well, I think that's a good suggestion, but I'll give you some figures about our last semester. After we introduced that, our tendency, the show-up rate, student show-up rate increased to as much as, 3 times. In my personal opinion, I would think we would be better to keep that, and I would think it's beneficial for the program as a whole.
Silence isn't necessarily a bad thing in an interview, either when you finished your answer and the selector is making notes, or when you're thinking of what to say.
So can you describe a situation or a time when you have been under pressure to meet a number of challenging deadlines?
Well, I have deadlines quite often. I'm doing PhD and have 3 part-time jobs at the same time. So I have to, when changes happen, I have to prioritize things. So there's once that I have a deadline for conference paper. So what I did is to prioritize things, and I decided that at that moment, my main focus would be on the conference paper because it would matter a lot to my future career and study. And
listening to Juan's answer, it's not easy to follow what really happened. She's talking about a specific example, but she's talking about it in a generalized way. What 3 jobs was she doing? What was her paper about? Which conference was it? It can help you make sure you answer questions fully if you follow the acronym STAR: the situation, the task, the actions you undertook, and the results you achieved.
Okay, so tell me about a time when you have produced a piece of work which exceeded the requirement.
Well, again, I'll use the example from my experience as a help desk demonstrator and course organizer. So, well, usually we'll just do our routine work and go there and organize the course and deliver it, and that was fine. That was all we were asked to do. But I realized at some point that we had this series of workshops, and I think the content was very good and very helpful to students, but we always had a low attendance. I kept contact with the other course organizer in the other campus and saying that, see if when you're doing a course, would it be possible to mention our course at some point? So if any students are interested in this specific issue or part of area, can you mention that there is a similar course in other part of the campus and you can actually go register and attend that? Yes, and she agreed, and we're doing a cross promotion actually, and I think it's a win-win situation, so she wouldn't mind. And yes, our class attendance increased 3 times, 4 times, and that was great, I think.
Okay, and what feedback did you get from?
It was very good. She thinks it's a very good approach, and actually we applied it to the other courses as well.
So what is it that attracts you to working at KPMG specifically?
Well, KPMG has done a career fair in our university this year and also last year, and I've been to the career fair and had a conversation with a member of staff there, and also I have...
Every selector wants to hear how committed you are to working for them. KPMG call it career motivation. Be prepared to explain what attracts you to the job, why you've applied to this employer, and how much you actually know about the career path you've chosen. It's also good if you can explain how it would benefit the company to have you working there.
The most impressive thing that I learned from this information is that KPMG is a very people-oriented organization. It provides a lot of support from different angles for graduates, and I think that's very helpful because when you just got off the university, you might know nothing about business and everything, and I think it would be better to have, because I know KPMG provide mentor and also counseling manager and also even counseling partner for graduate.
In terms of making an impact, she had really good eye contact, she was very clear and concise, and she answered the questions that I asked her, and she did build up a good rapport, so I gave her a good mark for that. Because it's all competency based, we're very strict in that we are looking for examples of when they've met those competencies. But overall, it's really, especially around the career motivation and business focus side of things, it's just to have done the research in order to be able to give a concise and an accurate answer to the questions that we're giving.
Well, Pippa, welcome along to KPMG. My name's Matthew Parker, and I'm a graduate recruitment officer at KPMG. I've been in the role for approximately 2.5 years, and I have a number of responsibilities within that role, one of which is to interview potential graduates for graduate positions. Can you tell me about a time when you've had to build a relationship with someone that you've never met before?
When I was working in France, I think that was last year, the year before last. That was quite a difficult situation because I was working with a variety of new people in a new language as well. And although I was coming in at an assistant level, I was having to forge professional relationships with people I didn't know, which was quite difficult.
Okay. Can you think of one specific relationship that you forged, and how did you develop that relationship?
Well, when I first started working in the schools, there were 3 different schools. My role wasn't very defined, so what I did is I attached myself to one person within those schools. So, for example, there was a woman who was head of the English department of one of the schools, and I made sure that I liaised with her all the time, and I made sure that she was very aware of what I was doing and that I was aware of what she expected from me.
She made a positive impression. She was quite enthusiastic, and she had very strong body language, and she maintained eye contact, which suggested that she didn't have any, wasn't nervous, or if she was, she didn't show it. She impressed me because she did keep her answers quite succinct and quite precise, and she didn't labour the answers too much. And she had quite a varied range of experiences to draw upon when answering the questions as well. Can you describe to me specifically what you did in terms of liaising with her?
The selector liked Philippa's enthusiasm and professionalism, but does it count against candidates when he has to probe in order to get the specific example which he needs to hear?
If you're probing them to provide a specific example and they keep on talking quite generally, then it will start to count against them. However, if they then do start to talk about specific things, i.e. what they said, who they spoke to, and start to give situation names and places and dates, then that's the sort of evidence that you're then really looking for.
So be sure your examples are as specific as possible to make the best use of the limited time you have to sell yourself in an interview. Remember STAR, the situation, the task, the actions you undertook, and the results you achieved.
Can you tell me about a specific time when you've become disheartened with something that you've been working on?
During my gap year, I think I taught in a school in South Africa, and I was away for 8 months. And I think a few weeks after I arrived, I was having some problems adjusting. I think because my role wasn't very well defined, and I wasn't quite sure what I was supposed to be doing, and I was only 18, and it was my first time away from home for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Philippa got away with this example from when she just left school, as she also talked about more recent experiences. But it's not a great idea to use such old scenarios.
With the benefit of hindsight, what, if anything, would you have done differently?
I think I would have got involved with more of the extracurricular activities as even sooner.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to move on to a new competency now, and this competency is called business focus.
Okay.
And this is looking at your knowledge of business and your general business interest. It's a two-part question.
Okay.
The first part of the question is very straightforward. I'd like you to think for a moment and then choose a company that you feel has grown and become more successful in the last few years, and then name that company to me.
Okay. I don't know about specific companies, but I think a lot of internet-based companies.
Okay, if you could choose one and name one.
I think the commercial side of Macs, Apple Mac.
Okay, what are some of the factors in their success?
I think that I think that they're the market leaders definitely for a very specific new popular product such as iPods, and that they were very, very quick to take advantage of the downloading music phenomenon. I think I should have done a lot more research into general current business affairs. I think most of my research have been based on KPMG, whereas it should have been a bit broader.
The answers that she provided in terms of a company that was doing well was relevant, was Apple. However, when challenged and probed on what they had done well, it tended to be quite a repetitive answer, in the sense that she kept referring to the iPod and compared that to their previous business in terms of Macs. What would have made it a better answer is to maybe quote some information on how Apple were performing financially in terms of their half-year profits or annual year profits or their revenue streams, etc.
Some parts were more difficult than others. I found the business focus questions the most difficult part.
Thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
That's all my questions finished. If you've got some questions for me, I'll be happy to answer those now.
No, I don't think I do.
It doesn't count against her, no, but we would probably advise students to come with some questions prepared. It does demonstrate that they want to gain some more information, and it does demonstrate that they've carried out a little bit of research. It may be a case whereby the questions that they've prepared are actually covered off in the interview situation, either at the start or at the end anyway. And if that is a situation that arises, we would always tell the student to say, well, I did have some questions prepared, but you've appeared to have answered those already, so I've nothing further really to ask. But there are some more general-based questions that are often useful in that situation, such as, Can you tell me what the culture is like at KPMG? What are your personal experiences of working at KPMG? Those sort of things are good questions to draw upon if you maybe are struggling to find something to say or something to ask, or if the questions you have got on your sheet of paper have already been covered off.
I think it would have been better to have prepared maybe 1 or 2 questions that I could ask to show that I'd done some research and to show that I was genuinely interested in the company. But I think I was at the point where maybe I'd done so much research that I felt like I knew what I needed to know. So
she was good in 3 competencies, but her business focus was marginal.
And that's how it is with competency-based interviews. It doesn't matter how brilliantly you shine in one area if you're very weak in the others. You need to meet their minimum standards for each competency in order to go through to the next stage.
Moving on to the next competency is business focus. Okay, so this looks at demonstrating an understanding of business issues, understanding commercial realities and implications of situations. It's also showing an interest and initiative in business and that type of thing. Okay, so can you choose a company which, according to you, could further develop their business?
Tata Consultancy. It's a steel maker company in company in India, and it also has information services and information. It also is outsourcing client services company.
Okay. So how could they further develop their business?
Well, I think they would have to be more be more proactive in their development strategy.
Because of the nature of their work, KPMG see business focus as a key competency. But you'll find that commercial awareness is important for most employers. So you should expect to be asked about current issues in the business world, as well as what makes for commercial success. Prepare some examples with facts and figures if you can, and expect to be probed on them.
Actually, my mind went blank at that point, and I was like, okay, what do I say to this? And when she asked about a company that I should focus on, I just could not remember any company that I had read about. But I had read about before, but I just couldn't remember at that point. My mind just went blank. I would advise people to just prepare and sort of read up before coming to an interview, and be aware about issues if they're preparing for this interview.
And when you're going for an interview with any employer, whatever their field of business, it's really important to know about their clients and the challenges they face and their competitors.
So how do you keep your business knowledge up to date?
Well, I read FT, and I do have Financial Times, sorry, and I do have a desktop alert on my computer. I do keep in touch with that, and I do watch the BBC every day. So.
Okay. So what is it that attracts you to working at KPMG specifically?
Well, KPMG has a good reputation, as it has always been successively ranked as one of the good employers, and having a good work, ethic.
Do you know the names of any of those where they were ranked?
I think I did read up on the website about the Times ranking on the employers. I think, that's all.
You might think it's just vanity on their part, but every selector wants to know about the research you've done into your future employer. Where did you look, and what did you discover about them? Don't just look at their careers website, look at their main business site as well. Get some objective information about them and their competitors.
I think that students should be, they should read up on the website, which is quite informative, and also maybe sort of look into Wikipedia and read up about the company as well, so that they have more of outside knowledge about KPMG or other companies other than what the website says, because maybe you would get something else, some other information outside of the website.
Can you tell me about a specific time when you became disheartened with a task that you were working on?
Okay, disheartened with the time I'm working on. I was, again, going back to Bolivia. It was getting towards the and we'd been in the forest for probably close to 8 weeks and living in very, very basic conditions in the tropics with the flies. And we were having real problems we were climbing trees, we were rigging trees, and we were having real problems getting any ropes up. You know, they'd fall down the whole time, or we'd lose the throw bag, fishing line we were using to get fishing line up 50 metres, and then try and position it.
Jake happens to have had a wealth of exotic experiences and makes the most of them when he answers these questions. But you don't need to talk about exotic adventures to do well at interview. All you need are a few well-thought-out examples of times when you've demonstrated the competencies which the employer is looking for.
I waffled a little, perhaps went off track more than I should, and generally was end of a day kind of tiredness, wasn't at my best.
He wanted to describe all the great things that he had done, which is fine, but he could have done that in a far more concise manner. So we're going to move on to a new competency now. It's called business focus. And this is looking at your knowledge of business and your interest within the business world. So, first question, I'd like you just to take a moment to choose a company that you feel has grown in the last few years, and then name that company to me.
Okay. I will name BP as my company.
The petrol...
The
British Petroleum.
British Petroleum.
Okay, building on from the company that you've named, describe to me 2 of the significant factors that have been successful in their expansion.
Okay. One, speaking as an environmental scientist, I must say I admire BP. My views on the way climate change should be tackled involve industry, and I think that BP has realised that oil is not necessarily an entirely economic.
Lastly, would you know how BP are performing financially at present? For example, what would be their share price?
I don't know their share price, I'll be honest about that. They've had a few knocks.
He wouldn't have passed our criteria at this stage. The 2 areas that he would have been marginal on were his career motivation and his understanding of the role and what he was applying to. And secondly, it was around his personal impact as well in the interview. That being precisely that the questions that he was being asked, sometimes it took a long time for him to get to his answer.
Why do KPMG conduct face-to-face interviews?
We've done the research to know what it is that we're looking for. So we've gone and analysed what has worked at KPMG from our graduates, and then we've based that into our recruitment processes. The reason that I think we do it face-to-face is that you miss out on so much of the person when you speak to them over the phone, because you lose that huge amount of the communication. And as well as that, they will have already been successful at the application and the tests. And if we were to do a telephone interview, they would get to the final stage without ever having met anybody who works at KPMG. So it's their first opportunity to meet an actual physical person that works there and come in to see the office and really get a feeling for what it's like to work there.
What is Matthew looking for in the first interview?
A good demonstration of a range of competencies or a range of skills and behaviours. We're looking for someone's ability to articulate where they've worked under pressure. We're looking for someone's ability to articulate when they've worked within a particular team environment and how they fitted into that. We're looking at an individual's business knowledge and interest in business. If they're going to come and work for a professional services organisation, we want them to have an interest in the area and an interest in the business. And we're also looking at an individual's motivation for wanting to work for KPMG and why KPMG as an organisation is one that they feel that they would fit in well to. And of course, why they would want to work in audit or tax or advisory or whatever they've applied for. It's a common thing sometimes that you observe in interview situations where people will talk quite generally, and an example of that I see from time to time is when you ask someone, what did you specifically do in that situation? They say, we did this. And what you're actually looking for is what they did. So they should almost be talking in the first person. This is how I resolved the situation, as opposed to we did this.
What do candidates do that makes Matthew's heart sink?
Answer their phone, yeah. When they say, I really want to work for Deloitte. Not so much make my heart sink, but when you recognise that the preparation they've done isn't really, is very limited, that's sometimes not so good. But yeah, these were two very relevant examples that did make, not my heart sink, but put me off a little bit. Was one person that had their phone rang and then they answered it and proceeded to have a 2-minute conversation in the middle of an interview. And then another person who, quite innocently, but got KPMG mixed up with another organisation. So.
To summarise, although these are competency-based interviews, body language is important. Smile, make eye contact, look interested. Be prepared for questions about business matters. Find out what competencies the selector is looking for. Think of examples where you've demonstrated each competency and work out how to describe it in a concise and compelling way using STAR, the situation, the task, the action you undertook, and the result. Treat each question as an opportunity to sell yourself. You need to convince the selector that you're serious about working for them, you know what they do, and you know what you'd be doing if you joined them. And finally, leave a good impression. An intelligent and perceptive question, maybe a thank you to the selector, and definitely a smile. For more information and advice about interviews, visit your careers service or the Prospects website.